So Lieutenant Colonel Tom Meagher with AFWERX Prime Division. A Prime program, how we structure that is that we go after a specific emerging tech sector. So for example, we have a couple that have been going on. So Agility Prime is our first one looking at transformative vertical lift. On our space side with SpaceWorks folks, we have Orbital Prime that's looking at on-orbiting, servicing, and manufacturing. And so how we structure that is that we try to create a collective throughout Department of the Air Force to get the right specialties throughout. So for example, with Agility Prime, we structure from the beginning, we have testers, we have program managers, we have financial folks, we have people that are looking at logistics, and then we also reach out throughout the Air Force. So the premise of the Prime programs is that we really focus on collaboration and relationships across a broad spectrum. So a handful of those could be the interagency. So if you look at what's going to make a commercial product successful, we need aspects of the entire federal government to help advance those and make them work. So for Agility Prime, for example, we have strong collaboration with FAA and with NASA because they've been leaders on some of those technologies. Within the Air Force, we structure it within the labs, the acquisition community, and the operational warfighters because we need the inputs of all of those to make some of these things happen and progress the tech so it's useful for not only industry but also the DoD. And then finally, we also want to bring in the investors. So we want to know what the investors are thinking about on the commercial side of where they're putting their money so we can also identify areas that have overlap and use for us as well. So there's a number of different collaborations that are really critical to making these Prime programs work. Yes. So we have to take a little bit of an approach similar to a startup because a lot of the companies that we're dealing with are certainly startups in these different fields. So we, as part of AFWERX, we run the Department of the Air Force's small business and small business tech transfer program. So a lot of the companies that we're engaging with that are certainly leading in some of these emerging tech sectors are small business to begin with. So we have to think kind of what sort of things those companies need so we can tailor what our support is for them. At the same time, for the Prime Division, we're not limited to small businesses. We're looking throughout all of industry. So some of the companies that we're dealing with are certainly backed by some of your major companies as well. So we're, for example, Lockheed, Boeing. So we're engaging on all sides of industry, not just the smalls and not just the largest, but we're trying to provide a gap between all those different companies that are interested in the same sector. So as we structure the program is that what we've seen in these, especially with the smaller businesses, is that the different needs of the companies and what benefits them most will vary widely. And so how we have done it is we've set up for Agility Prime what's called an air race, and that is a three-step process of how to get a company in. So a company will come to us. We've had commercial solutions and innovative capabilities opening out there that's still open and said, hey, these are the things that we're interested in. We have 3 different areas of interest of different types of vehicles. A company will come to us and they'll say, hey, this is what our vehicle might be doing. This is kind of the needs of and how the partnership between us and the Air Force will be beneficial. And then we go from there. So we'll go investigate with a company, see where the status of the technology at, see where we can both benefit both on the industry side and on the government side. And then we structure the relationship that way. So we use other transaction authorities as a specific contracting mechanism. And it can be everything from just data sharing to it can be things for in-kind testing. So what that is that we look at what sort of government resources and test infrastructure do we have that maybe some of these companies don't have access to. And so we'll tailor it to offer some in-kind testing, whether that's structural testing for landing gear or whether that's acoustic testing to characterize their vehicle. It completely depends on what the company needs and what best help them advance their concepts to get to initial viability. Yeah, so we've been doing Agility Prime for about 2 years. And so a lot of the initial work was just getting the rapid response from industry. So I think we have engaged with over 32 different companies that put proposals into us. We have contracts with over 22 different contracts, about 14 companies in the program. So at first it was just getting the companies in, figuring out what they need, then starting to see the status of where the tech and their development is. What we're seeing now is that we've had quite a few different advances through airworthiness approvals that have allowed us to do some of the first remotely piloted flights back in December. And then we had our first crewed flights out in March on Beta Technologies. And then recently out in July, we had the Army was able to get some of their aviators to fly on that. Other milestones we've seen, Lift Aircraft has aircraft that are down at Eglin and Duke Field and Hurlburt that are doing government test operations on a test range. So that was a big milestone for us. So we want to get these vehicles past just their initial prototype development and start getting them through some government tests. And so we start seeing what use cases make sense for government use and start helping the companies get through some of that initial testing avenues. And so what we're doing now is we're looking at the business case analysis and where they best fit for some of the DoD use cases and start to identify as we get past some of this initial test phase of, does this make sense for some initial operations? And then work with Air Force leadership on finding the best avenues for the companies and for the use of this technology. Because if you look at how the Air Force operates, distributed logistics is critical to supporting all of our operations. So we're looking at, can these concepts support those type of mission steps in the near term, and then also long term as we continue to develop out their capabilities. So AFWERX itself is almost 150 people. Prime itself is pretty small. So we're about 15 people on the government side, so between military and civilian. But what we've done is we've created a fairly large matrix organization. So we've partnered with the program office for personnel. We've partnered with AFWERX for operational tests. We partner with developmental test squadrons, for example, out of Edwards Air Force Base and Eglin to help test our things. So when you actually add in the large number of people that are interested in supporting, as well as our additional support contractors, it becomes a pretty sizable and very capable team to execute this effort. The exciting thing about this job that allows me to have fun every single day is just engaging with all these different companies and the exciting concepts and vehicles that they have out there, and looking at the future about how those could be utilized in the government and also throughout the general public. I think there's really a strong use case and importance to seeing this tech adopted throughout our communities, because it will have a very big impact on how we move people around, how we move things around, and also provide different avenues beyond just our normal transportation sector.